What's up, YouTube? How y'all doing today? Well, today I'm out in the 4Runner and I'm traveling through some of the back roads on the Oregon coast, just outside of Florence. I'm in an area called Ada Grange, and I'm heading out to some lakes that are out here. So this would be just a little bit south of the town of Florence, and it's really neat when you get out here. It's just kind of like being out in the back. It's like being out in the country. There are farms out here. It's absolutely beautiful, just beautiful country. I actually really would love to be able to own a piece of property out here with maybe a cabin on it, or just some land where I could live in the truck camper while I build a small cabin. You know, just have my own place. I really would like that. That would be this would be a great area to live. So I'm just taking along for the ride here. I'm gonna find a lake, and then I'm gonna make a couple of videos for you guys. Well, here we are, guys. I believe this is the Siltcoos Lake. Check it out. We've got some railroad tracks going through. There's a little bit of a trestle here. I love coming down here. It's one of my favorite places. A little bit of breezy today. See if I hear any trains running here. Don't hear anything. Taking this shot. I've got my tripod on top of the hood of my truck right now, so I'm just standing out here in a Lane County park. This is a day use area. Nobody here, all by myself, just kind of out here in the sticks. So good place to be. I love being out here, love just being out here in nature. It just clears my mind so I can think, and I can just really have a lot of clarity about everything. I love it. Yeah, it's a nice place. It's June. I love June. I think June's probably my favorite time of the year. Here in the Northwest, everything is blooming and it's green and it's cool, and we've got a couple of months to look forward to of sun and warmth, so that's always a good thing. Let's see, what I wanted to talk about today is a couple of things from the trip. I wanted to talk about wind and being lightweight. Those were two big learning lessons for me in traveling. The wind was probably the worst part of the trip. The wind, as far as driving in the wind and camping in the wind, it was the worst. Some of the windstorms in the southwest, they're pretty bad. I was cooped up in the truck camper on a couple of nights. I ended up being cooped up actually the entire day, night. On about 2 occasions, I ended up camping out in the camper all day because there was a windstorm going on and the dust blowing everywhere out in the desert. So that was not a good thing. I didn't like it, but that's just the way it is. There's nothing you can do about it. You can't run from it. You can't hide from it. When the wind is blowing, the wind is blowing. As far as driving in the wind, that was definitely an interesting experience, so to say the least. I got a whole new appreciation for pop-up truck campers. You know, the truck campers that pop up and they can collapse and they have a lower center of gravity, but I think that they do a lot better in wind. So I did okay. The worst place for me in the wind was when I was traveling up 395 in Eastern California, and there was a couple of sections where the truck was, it was literally, I mean, I had two hands death grip on the steering wheel, and it was just blowing me, you know, from one side to the other. A couple of places were pretty bad. Actually, in Northern California, just in the Bishop area, the highway patrol had the road closed off to RVs or tall, oversized vehicles. They had it all shut down. You couldn't even drive. So I think that's when I spent the night in the volcanic tablelands up there. But so yeah, wind, I don't know how the wind is in the spring or the summer months, and I was of course down there in the winter, and you know, there was a few days where the wind was blowing, but that's just the way it is. But as far as how did the truck and the truck camper handle, I thought it handled pretty good for the most part. I mean, as much as that I can expect. But like I said, I did gain a new appreciation or respect for the pop-up truck campers, because I think they would do a lot better in the wind, because you just have less resistance going on there. So that's definitely something to consider if you're considering a truck camper and you plan to do a lot of traveling with it. You really might want to seriously consider one of the pop-up versions. They have some really nice ones. There's a lot of different models to choose from. North Star is one brand that I like that makes a good pop-up camper. So you might really want to consider those, because wind is definitely a factor for sure to consider. What else can I say about wind? I think that's about all. I think that's about everything I can summarize. You can't really plan around it. You just have to deal with it, correct, and take your time. And if it's just too windy, then pull off the road and spend the night somewhere and continue your travels when the wind is better. Being lightweight, I was way overweight on this trip. I had too much junk with me. And one of the very first things I did when I returned back to Oregon is I went by my storage locker and I unloaded everything that I didn't use. Everything. And then I went through the scales. I am going to be making another video talking about truck camper weight specifically. But I did go through, there's a scale that I can weigh in my town, and I weighed my weight, and I dropped about 400 pounds out of the camper when I returned home from the trip. So there's definitely 400 pounds, doesn't seem like a lot, but when when you're out traveling, it is a very big deal. So my lesson I learned is I brought way too much stuff with me that I didn't use. And you know, I think that's kind of typical of the first, you know, your first time big traveling in your RV or whatever you have. Your first time out, you're probably going to be bringing way more than you need. So a big learning lesson for me was just I want to be as light as weight as I possibly can, and don't bring unnecessary things. Only bring the things that I'm going to use. And I mean, that goes for everything. Clothes, I mean, there's only a couple things you need. So I really learned the importance of being lightweight. It's very important. And even with you know, your holding tanks and how much weight you're carrying in your holding tanks, and that's of course going to vary from vehicle to vehicle, but it does make a huge difference. And I try to plan accordingly with my water. I don't fill my water tank up completely anymore. I don't do that. I'll fill it about 3/4 of the way. I think it handles a lot better. Going with that. Another thing that I did when I returned back home is, and I'm going to make a video about this, is I had torque lift stable loads installed on the truck springs. I had the lower ones, the lower stable loads installed. There's two. There's upper and there's lower. The uppers act as a bump stop. They increase the bump stop. They decrease the amount of spring that it can travel when a load is loaded on the bed. And the lower ones affect the spring rate. There's shims that you actuate right above the overload. And so when the spring compresses, the spring can only compress so much because you have shims between the overload spring and the bottom leaf spring. They're supposed to work very, very well to improve sway, less sway with the camper, and then it also increases your spring rate, the amount that you can carry, and then in using those with the airbags, gives you a lot more adjustability. And I shouldn't have to use my airbags as much, but I did have more sway with the camper than I wanted. I didn't really like the way that it handled for the most part, so I needed to, when I got back, I needed to make some improvements there. So I haven't actually tested out the stable loads yet, and when I do, I'll report back to you guys with my findings. But I will be doing a video soon showing those on the truck, how they work, how you activate them and deactivate them. I did a lot of research, and they really seem to solve two of those problems, mainly with the sway and increasing the spring rate with your springs. So handling and stuff, it was kind of a big deal. I tested a lot with my airbags. I made a lot of different adjustments, but I still just wasn't getting the ride. It seemed like I had too much air in the airbags, or I didn't have enough air. I couldn't really find an equal balance with it, because when you pump the airbags all the way up, that puts a lot of pressure on those springs. So that affects the ride, and it makes the spring less flexible. It limits the amount of spring travel when you have the airbags all the way pumped up. So I experimented a lot, and I think it was like 70 in one side and 50 or 40 in the other side, because one side of the camper is heavy. And that's why I think having airbags on a truck and camper setup is essential, because generally one side of the camper is heavier than the other. So it allows you to level the rig out one side to the other. So yeah, being lightweight is definitely a really important thing, and so yeah, I highly recommend that. I mean, this is why it's so important to be out there and do stuff and try stuff and test stuff and experiment with things, because that's the only way you're going to learn. You can read and you can watch other people do things, and you can learn some valuable things from other people, but you've got to really get out there and figure out what it's going to be like for you. And so that's what a lot of this trip was for me. It was to figure out what was working well, what wasn't working well, so I could come home and make some adjustments to things, so that things will work a lot better. For example, the generators. I had two generators on this trip. I had the onboard LP generator that came with the camper, and then I also had a small Honda 2000 generator, which the Honda 2000 was very essential the entire trip. I used that like every other day to recharge my batteries. Now that I have the solar set up, I can eliminate that altogether. I just need the one generator, and so I think that just having the LP generator on the camper is going to be sufficient. I don't think I'll need to have that additional generator as long as my solar is working properly all the time, and is keeping the batteries charged enough to where I can fire up the generator, where I have enough battery power to do that. So yeah, those are definitely two very big deals. Wind, being lightweight, be prepared for the wind. There's nothing that you can do about it other than making sure that your setup is secured very good, and just dealing with it. And being lightweight, that is something that you have a lot of control over, and you can always become more lightweight and just get to the essential things that you really need. Thanks for watching, guys, and we'll see you on the next video.